John boy, how are you?
All right, and you, Big Z?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Fucking internet again in the office, playing up again.
Oh, good. Technology is wonderful as long as it works, but when it doesn't,
Aye.
uh,
So today, mate, you've helped me a lot over the last 12 months. Today, I'd like to know a bit more about you. You, you've learned a lot, you've studied a lot, but I know bits and bobs about the real you, but don't know the real you. I'd say.
okay.
You're a very mysterious character, I think.
Enigmatic, am I?
So, so I guess today, mate, it's all about sort of digging into your mind and seeing who John is. What's John's roles of identity? Who is he? What's he all about? I guess because I believe personally, and I've said this to you, and I know it's blowing smoke, but you're by far the cleverest person I've ever met, and I believe a lot more people deserve the help that you can give them. And I think if people were to listen to this and then get in touch with you, and I think it's well deserved because I think your name should be a lot bigger than what it is at this moment in time, and I believe it will be. But this is about understanding who you are.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate that. Sounds like a marketing pitch there, doesn't it?
So I guess, mate, I think we start from the early years with you, and sort of I know a bit of your background, but where you grew up. What were you like as a young man, young boy, and then we'll go from there, mate.
Okay. So what, you want to start a childhood kind of thing?
Start
We
the
can,
what?
with childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I've got a Scottish mother, and you won't believe it from my accent. And the other bit you won't believe from my accent, my dad was from Manchester. So they came to South Africa to build a steel factory in a little town in the outback in South Africa, 2 hours kind of east of Johannesburg. So it was a little stick of a town. And small rural community, very South African, Afrikaans dominated. It's a mining / farming community. So rough in terms of, they're not rich people, they're not sophisticated people, they're the working class. And that was the expectation. When you were born into that, that's the expectation. That's who you are, that's what you're going to become. Unless you, whatever airs and graces, have the opportunities to go and study or, win the lotto and get out of there somehow. And that was pretty much my fate. I became a fitter and turner, and I went and I worked in the mines. I worked underground. That after the army, right? So after the army, I did. We have to do national service.
Yeah.
So I ended up in a fighting unit in South Africa. It's called 7 Psi. Our infantry bases I've got SAIs, SAI behind them, South African infantry. And I ended up being in one of the elite infantry camps for my national service. And we spent a long time the other side of the border. We're not supposed to, I suppose, talk about it because we were never officially there. But I spent a long time. Basically, we were doing guerrilla warfare in Angola and then in Southwest Africa. So I was up either other side of the border or on the border for about 18 months, which for a national serviceman was a long, long time. So we saw a lot of rough stuff.
What kind of person were you as a teenager, John?
Yeah, I was rough in that I was strong-willed. I was always, you know, fighting against authority, but not this loud, rebellious type. I just literally quietly went and did my own thing. And if anybody got in my way, um, I'd walk over them. I don't have much in the way of fear. So I remember like having clashes. Uh, there was an English Afrikaans, so the Afrikaners in South Africa, different breed on their own. We often had clashes, and they would often corner, lone speaking English people on their own and beat them up. And I enjoyed those engagements, which, confused the people around me. They're like, "Oh, we need to move about in gangs. We need," and I wasn't a big fan of it. I was quite happy to take them on and take them out. It sounds great. So I did martial arts back then. I did Wing Chun, and I did JKA, and I did a bit of judo. So I felt like I was, well capable to handle myself. But I was a little runt, I was tiny. I was really, really small. When I went into the army, I think I weighed all of, I don't know, 48, 49 kilos. And
Right.
they were like, "We don't know if we can take you, mate." Um, so I was on like a 2 month probation. And if I picked up weight while I was there, they would have kept me. If not, they would have tucked me out. I managed to pick up the weight. Doesn't make sense wanting to pick up the weight and stay in the army, does it? But that's where I was at. So yeah.
Where does the no fear come from?
I'm not sure, Lee. It's a streak I think in our family. With my mother, she was a real Scottish terrier. Had no fear for anything, and I grew up not um, having a regard for authority, or in confrontations. There was no way that I was going to back down. So I was always standing up to the challenges. A lot of me standing up to the challenges was with my own parents. They weren't having a
Mm.
great time, and they had split up at a point. I got dragged to England. Uh, my mother had family in Northamptonshire, near Kettering, town called
Yeah.
Corby. Yeah. So I
Mhm.
got dragged there for a bit, and I think that was a bit of a culture shock for that school. They couldn't place me at first. At first, they thought I was American with the accent. And then they thought I was from Australia. "Are you Australian, mates?" Like, no, no, you really don't understand. And then, yeah, I established a reputation for being the dark boy or the white boy from dark Africa.
Mm.
So it was always a thing of defying the odds, and picking up challenges, whatever was thrown my way. I was always happy to take on challenges. Um, the bungee jumping, by the time I was, 20, at this stage, I don't know how many times I've bungee jumped, probably 20 or 30 times. You
Mm.
Then regard it as a scary thing. So there was a real lack of being aware of the consequences of silly actions. And that's
Mm.
probably why at 54, I tore my Achilles tendon off on an obstacle course. You know, they say with age comes wisdom. I don't know about that.
Do you think the lack of fear? Because I've heard you talk about before that you had a real issue with anger and aggression. Do you think they sort of walk hand in hand? The lack of fear and the anger issue, if you'd like, sort of walk hand in hand together.
I do think there is a correlation and a connection. Um, the anger was born out of the circumstances at home, the
Mm.
fighting all of the time, alcoholic father. and a disgruntled mother. So there was never peace at home. Um, the noise volume, the volume at home, I always say was like really, really loud. It was always, you had to fight for your space, to have your voice heard, or, just for breakfast or whatever. It was a constant aggression all the time. So yeah, I think there was a high anger level. Did that give rise to a lack of fear? Yeah, probably. You know, I
Mm,
was probably, I often say I may have had the Napoleon syndrome where I was this little guy that was out to prove how big and tough I was. But I was little.
mm,
I was really little.
mm,
Um,
mm,
but made up for it in bombastic approach and dogmatic view and a loud voice. I've got this voice that's always an outside voice. When I meet people, they're always
mm,
like, "Yes, dude, use your inside voice." So it's this
mm.
loud
Yeah.
going out there all of the time. So yeah, there might be a correlation there, Lee. Possible.
Mm. What what do you think that you struggled with as a young man that nobody really saw?
So the loud voice for me, I was actually having this conversation with somebody the other day. If you're in a room where there's a lot of noise and you're having a conversation with somebody and you can't quite hear them, you're gonna go, "What?" And they're gonna speak a
Mm,
bit louder, and you go, "What?" And they speak a bit louder. Eventually, they're really booming. And I think the thing that I struggled with is I was not heard because everyone in my family was doing exactly the same.
mm,
And when I went out into the outside world, it was like, I've got this view that people are so self-absorbed, they're not really aware of what's going on around them. So I was fighting to say, hey, I am here, I've got something to say. And that's this loud, booming voice on an ongoing basis. But there was a point in my life where I then stopped talking, and that lasted for a good 20 years. And your introduction in that my name should be bigger than it is, my message should be, wider spread than it is at the moment, I think stems directly from I shut that voice down because people are
mm,
intimidated by the loud voice. They get put off by the delivery. And they're like, why are you shouting at me? Why are you shouting? Don't shout at me. So don't get put off by the delivery, mate. Hear what the message has got to say. And I
mm,
went into that radio silence kind of thing. Maybe because I was tired of being told to pipe down, maybe as a way to learn how to control my own voice and present it in a way that's more acceptable. Yeah. That I
it's
struggled with a
funny what
lot.
you it's what you said there about people are so self-absorbed in their own world that they don't see the message or the picture, if you'd like, and it goes back to the conversation we were having before about certain certain moments or comments that are made, and people only see what's right in front of them. They don't see the bigger picture. And I was having a conversation with my mum the other day, and she was worried about a few different things, and she was worried about what other people would think of her. And I said the same thing. People are so wrapped up in their own world and their own life that they can pass comment and judgment, but they don't really care. For a lot of people, they don't really give a shit about what other people are doing unless they can pass judgment or pass conversation on the topic at hand.
And doing it on social media gives them that anonymity. So
Mm,
they'll have a lot to say to make themselves feel better. If they're getting a little
mm,
dopamine rush out of that or whatever the case may be, they say it to make
mm,
themselves feel better. We've got this
mm,
view, a lot of people got this view that to snuff out somebody else's candle is going to make them shine bright. It doesn't. but they feel that. So they've got a lot to say about something, but they're not really paying attention to what's going on. They're too
Yeah.
and that even comes through in marketing. If you're not making it about them, if you're not telling their story, making a story about them, they're not really interested. If you make it about you and your product, people aren't interested. So you got to make it about them, right? That's the only time they really pay.
What just going back to sort of your younger years, would you've taught me a lot about patterns and processes and systems and beliefs and values like we've done today. And what do you believe were the patterns that you were repeating when you were a younger man without actually knowing it? For me, that this is how we met was you'd use drugs 3 or 4 times a week. You'd go out, you'd go to work, you'd come home, you'd drink, you'd use drugs, you'd have a row with the girlfriend, partner, wife, whatever, which is the same for a lot of people around here. And we'd create these patterns and processes without actually knowing that they were patterns and processes. And I think, we all have them. And what were yours? What were yours that you didn't realize?
I did the same, Lee. The shutting down, keeping quiet, and then being bored and frustrated within myself. I was looking for other outlets. So I went to high adventure stuff, and that included, drugs. It included reckless behaviors. I liked weapons. I liked the army mentality. I was, very caught up in the military lifestyle. Being a white South African, without making this a racist or political thing, being a white South African, we were kind of expected to be well trained and equipped. And that well trained and equipped and being, battle ready and all of that kind of thing was a mindset and a pattern that repeated itself. But all of the time there was this feeling of imposter syndrome that as much as I was equipped and prepared, I didn't really feel equipped and prepared. And I would use drugs to kind of, I don't know, numb myself to the fact that maybe I wasn't as prepared and as equipped as I hoped. And going into the army and watching, people die and all that kind of thing, it made me realize, came to the place where I realized, you think you're prepared, you think you're equipped, but it doesn't matter what you do. There's always somebody bigger, stronger, smarter around. And if that's going to be the mentality, I've got to prove, make my way by proving myself, that's going to put me in direct confrontation with them all the time. And I was doing it on a consistent basis. And the more I did that and came second, the more I really quieted my voice so that I would just make myself second. And we had a
What
demonstration
was
of that the other day. Onion face. Onion breath.
you had a demonstration? Say that again.
We had a demonstration of that the other day where I was caught up with a new teacher, old onion breath. And for a while I was like really impressed with his teaching. And then once I got to the bottom of it, I was like, actually, it's not as good as I initially thought. That sounds very arrogant. Anyway,
What was that in? What was the teaching?
the guy was very good about picking up on patterns in other people, and I think I'm very good at that. But I think I also, for a long time, took mine for granted. There was a stage in my life where I would actively pursue that. And I got to the place where, it freaks people out because you can get really deep. You can get really intimate about what you draw out of people. And they would say, oh, you're a demon or you're demon possessed. And then, in the community that I was, they were very religious. So it was
Mm,
really spiritualized in a negative way. And they were like very anti hypnosis and all that kind of thing. So I got into the habit of reading people, but not talking about it. So I would read you, for example, or anybody, and use it without saying to you, this is what I'm doing.
mm,
And that I kind of had to struggle with that a lot because there's a lack of integrity there. You know, this, this stuff can be utilized. Neurolinguistics, neuroscience, you, a lot of con men, con people use it to manipulate. And just because it's often used as a negative weapon doesn't make the weapon in itself a bad thing.
mm.
It's like a handgun. A handgun is just, it's an object. It's neither good nor evil. It's how it's applied. But I got the view and idea that people viewed it and me as evil. So I would do it on a undercut level, you know. I would use it to sell and we'd close the deal, and I'd use it to counsel and you get in the result. I'm not saying to people, this is how I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing it. And over the last 15, maybe 20 years, then saying, you know, this is what we do and this is what we utilize, and let people make that decision whether they want to do it or not, has been a good thing for me, you know, just in terms of aligning with my own integrity.
Well, what was the moment for you, John? Because obviously, you know, you're a wizard in NLP, in neuro linguistics, neuroscience, psychology, fucking spirituality, religion. But what was the moment that made you realize that humans don't necessarily work in the way that we think they do? You know, in that everyday perception of what we see. You know, when you look at somebody who's stressed, you just think they're stressed, you know. But that stress is part of a process, it's part of a cycle, it's part of a role of the identity. You know, when was it that you started to figure that out, and how did that come about? Is it just, you know, is it just something that you wanted to just start studying, or was there a moment in time?
So Lee, this is going to sound like absolute BS, but it's very true. So as a kid in primary school, we would have exams at the end of the year. And when the exams were finished, there was 2 or 3 days before school then shut. But we had to go to school, right? So the teachers would give us, you know, coloring in books and all kinds of stuff. Um, and one day I sat, uh, you know, this was primary school going into high school. So in South Africa, that's grade 7. And I said to mates, the teacher said we must draw our house and family members, you know. And I sat, uh, obviously I drew, and then this kid sitting next to me, I looked at his picture and I said, you're not happy. And he's like, what do you mean? So I started analyzing his drawing. Now I was 12 years old. I started analyzing his drawing. I could see there was messages in the drawing. I'd never studied it. Obviously, I was 12 years old, but I could feel an energy coming off that. I said to him, you don't like your dad giving you the hidings, he beats you. He's like, how do you know that? I said, look at the size of the hands that you've drawn in the picture. Look at the way you've drawn your dad's face versus the way you've drawn your mother's face. You've got a better relationship with your mother. He's like, how do you know this? And the other kids in the class were like, oh, you know, yes, this dude, he's now analyzing this mate. Do mine, do mine, do mine. So I sat, I think I did 5 or 6. And the teacher was standing watching us, and she said, come with me. So at break, we went into the staff room, and she had got, I don't know, sent a message or whatever. She had got some of the teachers to do their own drawings. And I sat and I analyzed them, and they were blown away by this, by how accurate it was. I realized in that year that we put on a mask, we put on a front, but even though we are putting on this front, the truth is behind it and seeks out around it. So I knew from then on that I was always going to study psychology at some point. There was no doubt. There was no ifs, whats, or buts about it. Because the conflict that I could see in people between the truth that was burning inside of them versus what they portrayed didn't match. There wasn't a we were talking about the word congruence and incongruence today. There was no congruence in the message between the burning passion behind the facade that they were putting on. And I was like, okay, I now want to get behind that facade. By the time I finished high school, I was really good at, at deciphering drawings. Really, really, really good at deciphering drawings. So there was no ifs, whats, or buts about where I was going to go, what I'm going to study.
What do you think, looking at that there, what do you think some of the most common traits that people show physically through body language and stuff like that, where, you know, their behaviors aren't necessarily matching up with what's underneath?
So the thing that struck me the most is when people are functioning from hurt or pain or loss, they're gonna give you a message. So you first of all, you want to start with what do they want me to know? With what they want me to know is what are they pulling my attention away from? It's like doing magic. Magic is deception. So what they say is, look over here while I do something over here and set you up, right? So they call that misdirection. So from a very young age, I realized that there was a misdirection. The louder and more bombastic people were, that was an indication to me that there was hurt, pain, loneliness, suffering. People that were out helping others in this big way, for me, that was a call to say, I need help. I'm struggling. I'm the one that needs help. There was this contradiction, back and forward always. Basically, whatever it was, whatever the mask was to cover up what the pain was. And I see that even now. You know, you can see with people positioning themselves as um, friendly and you know, wanting mates, having great connections with people. That is often a sign, a symptom that they're actually quite lonely for whatever reason. For the most part, I think people have got this. We've got this thing where we feel like we are not enough, and we have all of these um, masks and gimmicks that we put on in order to become enough. And we go one of two ways. We either take pain and suffering as a way to justify ourselves not being enough, and we become a victim, or we'll go, you know, strength, intelligence, money to make up for the lack of being enough. If I show you all of these goods, would that make up for the lack that I have, that is me? And neither of the two of them are true. The way we are brought into this world, and the hurts which is passed on from one generation to the next, is we inherit um, pain and loss and brokenness, and we come into this world with the concept that we're not enough, and we're going to have to do a song and dance or whatever the case may be to prove that we are enough. And then we want to function in this world to get to the place where I've got enough qualifications, or I've got enough material resources, or I'm injured enough to say I'm enough. And none of that's true.
And I think, since, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think since I met you, I've been both. I think when I met you initially, I was hurting, I was in pain, I was suffering, I was in a bit of a difficult place. And then even after that, I'm like say I'm doing that level 7 in trauma psychology, the NLP, the neuroscience. I've always wanted to get as much knowledge as I could, and even that in itself is almost well, it is. I, we had the conversation last year where it was almost like I was looking for a silver bullet. I think you mentioned it to me about a silver bullet, and that made me realize that it was never about the knowledge. It was about me as a person not feeling fulfilled or good enough to fit into a certain narrative or conversation or environment. And that was a big moment for me because I realized it was never about having all these titles or having all these skills or abilities. It was about being enough. And even in the best parts of last year, that message carried a lot of weight towards the back end of last year, where it was there is no silver bullet. Like we spoke about the Matrix, there is no spoon. The spoon can be anything you want it to be, and that in itself was a moment where I just thought, okay, relax yourself a little bit. You've got all the abilities and skills you need. Let's just build something rather than absorbing everything. Let's build something and embody, like we said about embodiment and embodying something that's going to allow me to be the best version of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that,
Mm.
that when watching you over, especially maybe the last 2 months, there for me has been a shift that you're not working towards having these qualifications anymore to prove something. It's
Mm.
now they have become in a foundation that you're going to function from. And that is going to give you a lot more confidence, but a stability in your identity that you're not going to have to go and prove yourself.
Mm.
And this is the danger that we have is we want to chase these qualifications, or we want to chase
Mm.
earning a big salary or having a house in order to prove. Um,
Mm.
we're not going to prove anything by, we've already proved, we prove who we are in our everyday living. So if I rather absorb that I am already that, and I start functioning from that, it's going to give me a lot more power, but it's also going to give me a lot more peace. And what I've
Mm.
seen in you is being this frantic, I have to prove myself to. No, I've got this. I can do this. I am able to do this. And it's brought a calm and a confidence to you that has been beautifully unsettling for
Mm.
anybody else watching. For you, you're going to
Yeah.
experience the calm. But watching it, this change in you has been absolutely phenomenal.
Mm.
All of last year, watching you change has been absolutely phenomenal.
Mm.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. And I think, from what we've spoke about many times, just the speed and speed can be a bad thing sometimes, right? And I think there are times where I will brush over or breeze through something just for the sake of completion, rather than really like let's take the values stuff that we've been doing. In the first couple of days, it was really rushed. I've got 2 hours time. Let's get it. Let's get this bit done. But the deeper I got into it, the more I had no choice other than to sit with it and understand it. Because if I was to rush through it, then I would never have finished it. I would never have done it properly because it doesn't just teach you about the values. It also taught me about, well, I used to call it patience, but now I call it timing. Understanding that when I've got that 60 minutes or that 90 minutes or that 2 hours, don't just breeze through those 2 hours. Understand that those 2 hours are longer than what I believe them to be. And that was a big thing. You asked me this morning what I learned from that values exercise. And one of the biggest pieces I've took from it was to understand that 2 hours can be a long time if I use it properly, or 2 hours can be um, a click of the fingers. It's down to me to make the choice of what that 2 hours entails. And that sort of One of the biggest learnings I've took from this year is that, timing is everything. So I've got to start writing my dissertation soon for this level 7. I've never wrote academically in my life, but what I've learned to understand is that I could learn a lot in 30 minutes, or I could learn absolutely nothing and just, you know, Google the answer and get it that way. But that's what I'm practicing this year, is the embodiment and timing. And this year is about mastering what I've learned in the last 12 months.
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%. I say it often. I say it to a lot of people. We've got this thing where we say knowledge is power, and I don't believe that. The application of knowledge is power. If
Mm,
knowledge was power, then librarians would be the most powerful people in the world.
mm,
And the bigger their library, the more power they would have. And people will rush through. I often, like being on social media, people will often, oh, you do NLP. Oh, I did an NLP course. It took them 3 days to do it. And I'm like, oh, what must I say to you? Am I impressed? So you heard a few clever quotes. You got some information. And I don't think us growing and getting beyond the masks is just about having knowledge and information. It is about
mm,
applying it in our lives and experiencing that transformation on a somatic level, allowing our bodies to feel the change. So that to me is more than just head knowledge. We go
mm,
through the pain and suffering in our whole system, mind and body. And we think just putting information is going to bring the result. I'm coaching a coach at the moment, and I got a message from him today. That he's setting up. He was sharing with me the schedule that he's setting up for people that will come on a long program with him. And he was like, oh, he's got 2 hours for this, and he's got 2 hours for that, and he's got 2 hours for this. And I sent him a message back, and I said, you know what? You've got 2 hours. But that 2 hours may
mm,
or may not work for those people, because this isn't about you, how clever you are, how much information you got. It's how they're going to
mm,
apply it in their life. That's what's going to make a
mm,
difference. You want to be known as a good coach, mate. You got to take the time to make sure that they properly cook, that they are
mm.
embodying it and living it, rather than just having the information at their fingertips. Knowing it and living it,
Yeah.
two very different things. Two very different things.
I had a powerful conversation yesterday with a gentleman. He is one of his family members. He's only 17. He took his own life on the railway lines a couple of weeks ago in the local area. The 17-year-old boy did. And we were having I sat with him yesterday for about 2.5 hours. Um, and we just spoke. We didn't really speak about the event itself. We just spoke about life. We spoke about certain psychological aspects, bit of NLP, some neuroscience, some visualization, the power of hypnosis. And yeah, at the end of it, he said, we were speaking about how he helps people. And we had a very similar conversation where I said to him, me and you sitting here now isn't about me marketing myself and advertising myself to you. This is about you. This conversation is about you and your family. It's nothing about me. Granted, there are times where I do believe now that I will market myself because I'm confident in me and my
Yeah.
abilities, and I genuinely believe if we call it a bag of embodiment, let's say, I've only just picked this bag up, and this is a bag that I'm going to carry around for the rest of my life and put more tools and
Yeah.
techniques and abilities into it. But even within 14 months, I genuinely believe as though I've learned more than a lot of people do in their whole lives as far as helping other people. And that
Yeah.
might sound egotistical, but it really isn't. It's empowerful. It's empowering to me. And the fact that I was able to sit there yesterday and have the conversation with a man who was clearly going through a lot of pain and suffering and grief at this moment in time, and I was able to hold the conversation and comfort him and help him through that moment. You know, he sent me a WhatsApp voice note today saying, "Listen, I really appreciate it. I thank you very much for your time, and you know, I'm going to meet him again next week, and for free as well at this moment in time. That you know, there's no cost or nothing like that. But
Yeah.
you know, that is coming in the future. But the ability to sit there and hold that conversation and make it about him and his family was worth more than any gold or silver in the world."
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%, man.
Mm.
And I think the reward, there's two things that stand out about that for me, Lee, is one, we live in a power evolving universe. From the moment, God said, let there be light, light has been, the universe is expanding at the speed of light. But it's not just expanding, it's upgrading. And where we stand, if we stand still on this planet, if in terms of our own personal development and growth, we make the choice to stand still, which I think a lot of people do. And I agree with you. I think your learning over the last 14 months, as you say, is far beyond what a lot of people do in a lifetime because they choose to stand still. They make a choice. But in this world, if you choose to stand still because the rest of the world, the rest of the universe is evolving, you're not standing still. You're regressing. And we've got
Yeah.
one of two options. We're either going to move forward or we're going to move backwards. But move, we're going to move.
Mm.
So that's number one.
I
We need to make that choice and actually decide we're going to move forward. I interrupted you there.
I remember seeing something in the Lean Six Sigma stuff that I was doing in Kimberly Clark's in my old job, and it was talking about growth and stagnancy, and it said the only thing that comes with stagnancy is decline or decay,
Yeah.
and I agree with it. If we stay at a certain level, we will never go. We will never elevate ourselves. We will only decay and decline and wither away. And I believe I was very similar. Well, no, to a certain degree, no, because the stuff that I was learning within my role in work was teaching me a lot of powerful things without me actually knowing it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't embodying them outside of my working environment in my everyday life, I guess. Um, but it's only since leaving that job and going to my next job that I've realized, fucking hell, that place taught you a hell of a lot without you actually knowing it. Which is really it was a powerful moment as well because I was that limiting beliefs that we talk about. I said, "Oh, I was this way all the way through my 20s and all the way through my 30s. All I did was drink and take drugs." Right? When it's not true. You know, there was a lot of powerful moments within those 15 or 20 years. It's just, you know, that like you said, the brain distorts, deletes, generalizes
Yeah.
everything. So I was generalizing 20 years of my life when, you know, let's say my working environment, I'd learned how to root cause problem solve at a very high quality level. Um, and, and if there's one thing that I can take away from there and adopt into my life is how to solve fucking problems.
Yeah. And you're right. I think the way we talk to ourselves about us frames our perspective. If we're going to have this thing where, like to say, I look at my past, I can say, I was a drug addict and my life was a fuck up. That's what I'm going to take out of it. But if I look at my past and I say, I'm choosing to take the good and the bad out of it, I want to go and look for the good things that I've learned and then consciously apply them. I think a lot of people are going to realize there's been a lot of lessons around them on an ongoing and consistent basis, which they've slipped past them because they've chosen a negative perspective. They've chosen to look at their lives as failures rather than opportunities for learning. But once we look at those opportunities and take the good out, take the learning out, going to makes the way powerful. And we need to keep putting into this bag. We can't take more out of the bag than what's already in it. So even at my age, 21, I'm still learning and growing and expanding my horizons and taking on new projects in terms of my own learning, growth, and development. Because I know at some point I want to reach into that bag and take some stuff out. There needs to be stuff in it. And whether that's through coaching, whether that's through, watching YouTube videos, learning. I love TED Talks, love books, always reading, getting inspired from them. They're not always great. Sometimes the lessons are few. Doesn't matter. I'm constantly putting in the bag because there is a time I'm going to dive into that bag and pull out. And that I've kind of always done throughout my life. I feel like I've been putting stuff inside the bag. Yeah. And the last 20 years has been about, I don't just want to pull out the bag and give somebody a fish. I want to teach them to fish. But if I just give them a fish, they're going to keep coming back. And then there's that codependent thing going on. I'm not in for codependence. I'll teach you how to fish. If you're willing to learn how to fish, I'll teach you how to fish. And then you can take it from there and expand in your own way. And you're doing that amazing. You're growing leaps and bounds. You've taken the foundation and you're making it your own. I was talking to Phil today about the difference. There's only been a couple of people go through the values program, himself and another lady. And the difference is she's a student and you are one seeking to apply it. So the difference is one is learning it, looks at the rules and principles and says, I need to learn these. Where you're taking it and saying, well, okay, thanks. And let me dismantle it and see how it works and where can I apply it and look for different circumstances and situations to apply it. So that's a very different mindset in approaching the learning. That learning doesn't have to stay inside of the box, doesn't have to stay inside of the tick. It's like you were saying earlier, when the Lean Six stuff, when it dawned on you that was applicable to more aspects of life, and you could see the opportunities, that also then made the barriers between all of the learning fall away for you. And now it's no longer just in that compartment or just, that learning is not just for work. That learning is not just for family. It can be spread right across the scope. And once we realize that, it makes a bigger impact. That's talking about education. That's the joy and the passion, right? Yeah.
You mentioned the other day that you had a couple of mentors. When was it that like obviously when I met you, there was this big moment where all this stuff that I wanted to learn, you sort of knew, and even the other educational aspects of what I'm doing outside of myself and your relationship, you could help me with them as well. Was there sort of that mentor role, that almost friend figure, if you'd like, that was doing this for you, or was it all self, if you'd like?
So for a long time in my life, it was myself. I initially clicked into John Maxwell stuff and was very passionate about John Maxwell and his leadership development programs. I then discovered neurolinguistic programming. So there was a guy that came from America. He actually spent time with Brindler and Brandler. He was a psychoanalyst. He's still a psychoanalyst here in South Africa. And he brought neurolinguistic programming to South Africa. And I was part of a contingency, a cohort of about 25, maybe 30 people that he then decided to bring together to actually, as coaches and mentors and therapists, equip us, train us in NLP, so that we could then uh, spread it in South Africa. So his name is Armand Clear. He was a major role in getting me anchored in neurolinguistic programming. There was another guy, Bill Price, also major NLP practitioner in neuroscience. And then there was a lady or two and another mate that were religious, that were let's rather say spiritual, and opened my eyes to not just the physical implications of having this work properly, but what the spiritual implications of that were too. So I've got these figures in my life that I've got direct access to them. Would I call them friends? Yeah, maybe. But they're not personal relationships. We're not that type.
Yeah.
But I've got a thing, I've got a counsel that I revert to when I need advice and guidance. And using ChatGPT has been a win for me. I created profiles for 12 people that I admire, respect, I appreciate their message. And in a project on ChatGPT, I put that profile in there and I said, right, this is the counselor. I want you to talk. That is, if you are the counsel. And in that is, the NLP founders, so Richard Brandt, John Grinder, Grinder, people I respect in terms of emotional stability, Brene Brown, Carl Jung. So when if I've got an issue, I go to that project and I'll say, all right, so I want to talk to the council. Council, this is my issue. I want to hear each voice in the council. Tony Robbins is in there. Bob Proctor is in there. So there's quite a few. Simon Sinek is in there. Then I get the issues that I'm dealing with. I'll get their voice through AI to give guidance.
So
Helps
you
me
so
make
you
decisions.
actively so you actively put all their names into the profile on ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will, if you say I want to speak to Simon Sinek, ChatGPT will then use Simon Sinek language to speak back to you.
Yep.
I like that. I'm going to do that. That's cool.
Yep. So you build a
Simon
profile
Sinek.
get
Go on.
ChatGPT to build a profile on each one. Have that in one
Mm.
document. You save it as a PDF. You upload it in a project, and then talk to it and say, okay, either as a whole council or as individual members in, one-on-one kind
Mm.
of thing.
Simon Sinek, somebody that I've been listening to a lot lately, and his books and his audio books and his YouTube videos, and I really enjoy the fact that he sits there and he says, he's not academically gifted. He's only ever wrote one book, but yet this man is, I think, anthropology was what he studied originally, which is
Yeah.
culture, if I'm
Yes.
right in saying. And his ability to speak from a psychological point of view, even though he hasn't got a great deal of psychology background, is fascinating to me, because
Yeah.
and the way he speaks as well, he makes everything sound so simple. Um, and different, like Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson will say, you've got to make your bed in the morning. One of his 12 rules, right? But Simon Sinek says, if you come over to my house is like a fucking hand grenade's gone off, you know? And I really like that vulnerable aspect of the way Simon Sinek talks, because he doesn't sit there and say he's got all his chickens in order or whatever. He sits
Yeah.
there and says, I'm just as vulnerable as the next person, but at the same time, he's got this gift around leadership and individuality, and yeah, he fascinates me. I think he's an amazing human being.
Yeah. is very
Um,
interesting.
what was the first result for you that made you think that this is what I'm destined to do? This is what you know that you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
So I helped a church and a stage, and they brought me a young lady. She was a girl, I suppose, 16, 17, and she had been gang raped. But they had caught the guys that had done it, and she needed to be in a place where she could testify. And she was in a mess. She was in a proper mess. So we went through some exercises. We did cinema of the mind. We did the circle of confidence. Um, and she was able to then go into the courtroom and give a sound, objective testimony that was then able to put them away, not get lost in the emotions and make it all, because that's often the downside of testimonies like that is people are so emotional they can't get the information out. So because of a lack of facts, the guilty are often let go. So the idea was to have her at a place where she was able to function and have them put away. So she did that successfully, and it blew me away. It blew me away. And that she then went on to have a healthy relationship and could function in a healthy, uh, committed relationship without having flashbacks and all that kind of thing. So the I realized that the techniques that neurolinguistic offered was far beyond, you know, having years and years and years of counts, having
Mm.
go back to the same therapist over and over and over and over again. In 2 sessions, we were able to, you know, put the keys of control within her hands to be able to handle her mental and emotional state to the place where she's able to function.
Mm.
For me, that was the key to say, this is what this is what I want. And that's the beginning of systems for me, because the system is something that whether I do it or you do it, we're going to get the same or similar results. But a scientific process that, if we follow the recipe, like cooking, if you follow the recipe, we're going to make the same cake. I can be here in South Africa, you in the UK. We sit and follow this recipe. I'm going to have the same result, or we're going to have the same result, even though we're miles and miles apart. And that's what I really like, is as much as we think we are different, and there is different solutions for each one of us. At the end of the day, if you go to those solutions and you break them down to their fundamental bits and pieces, a lot of the different solutions that people are offering are actually that work. I want to add
Mm.
are much the same thing. That if we are talking, focus, authority, connect them to a tribe, help them understand identity, give them mastery over emotion. If you look at all of the programs that work, those are the 5 basic principles that are in all of the techniques and things that actually help people piece their lives back together after the turmoil. So if we can duplicate that, wow, that's the power, right? That is the success. Love it.
Moving on a little bit to, I think it was one of the reasons how I came to meet you when we were talking about addiction and drug abuse and things like this. And why do you think that humans repeat behaviors, patterns, processes that they know are destroying them? Why do you believe that is? Because, you know, I'm a big believer in that addiction is rooted in pain or suffering in one way. Drug abuse or drug use, like let's take somebody who, me in my early 20s, I'd go out on a Saturday or a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. and drink and take drugs on a social level. But then towards, the last few years of when I'd take drugs, but I'd be sat in a room in the dark on my own with no lights on, no TV on, just with my phone, doom scrolling, not even just crazy place to be. And I did that for the best part of 3 or 4 years. Um, why do you believe that human beings put themselves through that process, even though we know that there's going to be nothing but pain, sorrow, and suffering within that process, but we still do it anyway?
Our brain is wired for the familiar. Our brain is literally wired for patterns. And often those patterns in the beginning of our lives offered us solutions of some sort. So starting off with the drugs or the alcohol, whatever the case may be, that was an answer to a problem that you were having before. So maybe the problem was pain, emotional distraught, or loneliness. So going out for beers with your mates, that was a solution, right? We do that a few times. We have the dopamine release and all the rest of it. We're like, wow, the brain says, well, this is giving us a solution to help us manage the pain that we've got. But we say to the brain, hey, but down the road, there is destruction. No, we're not about down the road. We're about now. The problem of loneliness or emotional pain or what that's manifesting in our life right now is going to be handled by the solution. And those solutions are often temporary fixes. They are solutions that help us connect with. Same reason that the positive stuff works, right? Focus, authority, tribe, emotions, identity. Those 5 come out in taking the drugs. We're part of a tribe. We're connected. We look at this. We look at Big Lee. He's a big man, and we'll say that around him, and get him pats on the shoulders, and you're this, you're that, feeding the identity. Or you are the authority in this this pub. If we've got an issue, you're the one that we're going to go to. So all of the same mechanisms that get us addicted or offer us solutions for the pain that we had, the problems that we had before, in our lives become repetitive patterns. But the consequences of those things down the line are not positive. The mind latches on to them and holds on to them because right now it's dealing with issues right now. We've gone through this fight or flight mode, and the solutions work for us in the here and now. But I could tell you now, if you were to snort a line of coke, for example, and your hair instantly burst into flames, how many people would do it?
Mm.
Not going to do it. So the consequences are too far down the line, and everybody thinks they can manage the consequences until we can no longer manage the consequences. Our mind, our brain doesn't care about our happiness, doesn't care about our well-being. It cares about our survival. It wants us to survive. Even if that survival technique in the long term is going to be our destruction. Initially, here in the right now, it's addressing a problem. And that is sad because that's, the lie we then tell ourselves. If you're going to manage the consequences down the road, you're not going to manage the consequences. But those same principles in terms of focus, authority, tribe, emotion, identity are the very same things that are going to set us on a path to living our purpose. And if we get involved in a program that's not promoting those things, then we don't get the success that we hope. So we need to have those same elements in our lives putting us on a pathway Does that make sense?
Mm. What 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 do you think for see? Because a lot of this stuff is it's really difficult to learn, and a lot of people. I'm not going to say they can't, but maybe they don't want to have that self-reflection piece. They want to, when we talk of toward and away from motivation, they'll be away from motivated, or they'll be avoidant, or they'll stay away from the root cause issue, if you'd like. And how do you feel as though people could take those first steps? And I know that we have therapies, we have CBT, EMDR, all different types of therapy, NLP. You've got recovery and addiction programs, but you know, just from a self-help perspective, how do you believe people could, open their own eyes to the possibility of a better future?
The first hurdle that we need to get over is realizing how powerful identity is. The I am statement, that initial prefix, I am, whatever you put in after that, our minds commit to making that a reality in our lives. And when I talk about this, people's initial gut instinct is to call bullshit on it. And I'll say to them, but
Mm,
hold on. Let's look at the evidence in your own life. What are your I ams? And when you talk to people that are having a tough time, if they're prepared to be honest, right? You're going to get the I am lonely. I am broken. I'm having a tough time. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. And all of those I ams are manifesting in their lives, creating the very circumstance. And then when you come to them and you say, okay, let's change that. Then they say, bullshit, it doesn't work.
mm,
What? But it's manifesting in your life right now. So let's just take, you don't even have to have positive I am. All you need to do is spot the negative
mm.
and watch the change in your life happen.
So would you say that is just the self-awareness of conscious or unconscious behavior, maybe? That would be the starting point.
We talk about consciousness, right? And my question is often is, what does that mean? For
Mm,
me, it means become aware of the habits that you put in your life, the things that you do unconsciously, and then ask the question, why do I do that?
mm,
What else could I do to get the same or a better result? You know, if we say, for example, um, I'll give you a recent one in my own life, right? I went through drugs and alcohol addiction and anger and all the rest of it. But for me, that was 30 years ago. My
mm,
most recent one was biting my nail. Even at the age of 57, I was biting my nail. So I then decided, I went on the hypnotherapy, uh, on a hypnotherapy course, and I decided what I'm going to do is self-hypnosis, and I'm going to do sort the nails. And I started asking the question, why am I doing? Why do I? What is the I am that drives?
mm.
And the answer was, I'm anxious. This is the soothing mechanism.
Yeah.
You sit there and do that with a soothing mechanism. I said, okay, how can I address that I am anxious and then provide a soothing technique in the moment that I don't have to bite the nail? Give me an option. And I sat back and I allowed my brain to give me an option. So I pace, I walk. I get the
Mm,
nervous energy out, I walk. Um, I've got a Fitbit tracker, so I can hit 12,000 steps in a day very quickly from pacing up and down. But it's now been 12 weeks without biting the nail. As soon as you become conscious of the behavior and you start asking the question, well, what's driving it? What's the identity that's driving it? And I went into that. I didn't even change the identity. I'm not having this big thing where I'm changing the anxiousness. That's part of who I am. I say that. I don't believe it. But I didn't want to get into changing all of the I am anxious. All I wanted was to stop biting my nose. Okay, I am anxious. You can be I am anxious. I just want a different behavior that's not destructive to me. I rather want a behavior that's in my favor, beneficial to me. And the pacing works, right? Great for fitness and losing weight and all the rest. So out of the anxiety, I can have a beneficial life. But that first step is just understanding. I've got a habit that is born out of an identity. What is that identity? Start there.
I think a lot of those habits or behaviors, if you'd like, all come through the avoidance aspect of something or other, even if it's part of your identity. Yeah, you know, I am anxious, but what's causing the anxiety? Is that avoidance from a certain environment or certain moment or certain part of who you are that you're avoiding, maybe? Um, and I think for me personally, avoidance was something that has been in my life, fucking hell, since I was a little boy. I think I've told you this. I remember where I used to go and see my dad on a weekend, and I'd come back and my mum would quiz me for like 3 hours. She wouldn't let me move. She wouldn't let me move off the sofa or the chair, and she would quiz the hell out of me to the point where she'd be screaming in my face. Where was he? Who was he with? What was he doing? Um, and it was easier for me to lie. It was easier for me to avoid the moment and just lie and say, "Oh, I didn't see him," or "He wasn't with
Yeah.
anybody," and then I'd get a reward, and the reward was I'd get to go upstairs and spend the time on my own. You know, and that avoidance became a tactic. It was
Yeah.
a skill that I'd mastered in the end, but inevitably that then showed its face in my teenage years, in my adult years, and
Yeah.
you know, and that's inevitably why I made a lot of mistakes. But I recognise the avoidance now, and I understand that it certainly wasn't a skill. Well, it was a skill, but it wasn't a positive
Yeah.
skill. Um, but yeah,
Well, it started as a positive skill. Lee. It was
mm,
a solution to a problem, right?
mm,
But all solutions, when you're doing problem solving and all, we want to implement solutions. We've got to be aware of the fact that there are consequences, and there's short-term consequences and long-term consequences. Uh, but as a 10-year-old you're not thinking about when you're in a relationship in your 30s, how lying
mm,
to get out of this confrontation with your mother is then going to influence that relationship. We don't look at. But if we can in develop the consciousness that in the moments where we are having a negative impact, look at it and say, well, this was a strategy that worked for that situation, not really giving me the ideal outcome. So
mm,
what is the ideal outcome now? Okay. And then work it backwards, If that's the outcome that I want, oh, okay. What is the skill that needs to be implemented? What value is going to drive it? What is the I am? What's the identity that's going to support it? And the consciousness that we talk about, we awoke, what woke? Uh, that's what we they are actually talking about, is being woke enough to realize that the things that we implement in our lives are going to have consequences down the road. Do you really want that as consequence?
yeah,
Rather than getting the solution right now, that's great, but being aware of the fact that down the road it's going to have negative consequences. Okay, then let me rather design my solution that it's
mm.
good now and good then. Same mechanism. All it does is take a little bit of, predicting where it's going to go. That uh, process, whether we come up with a solution where we're not aware of the outcome, or we're aware of the outcome and we change and transform it a little bit. Both of those happen in the conscious mind. And then once we've decided, it goes into the unconscious mind and starts getting implemented out of habit, becomes habit in our life. So why don't we just take a little bit of time, a little bit of extra time, and design an outcome? So we design our futures, not by accident. Let's not come up with strategies that are going to solve problems now, but hurt us later, intentionally or accident. Let's be deliberate in a win-win situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I remember you saying, when we talk, a lot of people talk purpose or meaning or identity, but you don't find any of them. I remember you saying to me, you don't find them, you design them, and that's one of the biggest key takeaways that I've had over the last 14 months is that we design them. Even the negative ones, they're designed through
Yep.
avoidance or anxiety or depression or drug abuse. We design who we are to a teetotal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we will end up in negative positions or negative environments, and we look at it and this is going to sound quite nasty, but it's not. We blame everybody else. But the fact of the matter is, we're in full control, and if we
Yeah.
allow other people's negativity to enter us or take influence in what we do, then that's on us.
Yeah.
Where there is positivity, there is negativity, and vice versa. And
Yeah.
it's quite fascinating. I'm in my infant stages of this, but I've had individuals send me videos of themselves self-harming in a serious way, really serious, and after helping them understand that they're in control, not me. All I did was ask questions most of the time. And then 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, I've had videos and pictures where, they've took full control of their lives and their life has flipped upside down in 4 or 5 months. And they've done it all. I didn't do any of it. They done it. And that's the power that a lot of human beings need to understand, is that we hold the power within inside us to be and do whatever we want, positive or negative.
The biggest lie we tell ourselves is, it is what it is. It is
Mm,
what it is. I am who I am. No. You've got the power to design it, flip that, change it really, really quickly.
mm,
It's up to you. And in terms of the speed of the change, that is up to you. You can make this a long, drawn out, process that takes months and months and months, or you can flick that switch. That's why the hypnotherapy works so well, right? Because you
mm,
flipping a switch, you getting into the identity, changing on values and beliefs level really quickly.
mm,
And that is a nice thing to be able to do, right? But for me, even better is then to equip people and say, well, here's the skill to be able to do that without hypnosis, without having other people in your life, so that you can design the outcome that you want intentionally, be deliberate about what it is that you want. Because the reality is, we don't get in this life what we want, we get who we are. That is,
mm,
that philosophy is not going to require me to sit there and come up with a perfect mold. And now I'm going
mm,
to squeeze in my life and I'm going to open this mold and it's going to be perfect. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to require a refinement and adjustments and all the rest of it as I am living this life, because shit happens. Life happens. Ship on course to another country, the currents take it off course, the winds take it off course, storms take it off course. There's always a little bit of course correction required.
Mm,
So if we have that understanding of that it's based in identity, we can go in there and climb and tune the mechanisms and all the rest of it
mm.
in order to get the outcome that we want. That's what I really like about what our brain offers us. And if we understand that mechanism, we can create the lives and futures that we want. We're not subject to our environment. We're not subject to our nature. When we say it is what it is, that's the sound of somebody resigning to fate's circumstances, and that's sad.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about it the other day, but I'll reword it. So what you're saying is there, even if you do steer off course, if you'd like, ever so slightly, as long as you're aware of it and you understand it, that is still operating in your truth, in your alignment, right?
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing there is the opposite of awareness is ignorance, and again, I use the word ignorance lightly, to ignore something, right?
Yeah.
And ignorance doesn't always necessarily mean that somebody's being an ignorant asshole, or that's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to ignore something within your environment that has affected you in one way, shape, or another, but you've ignored it, you've let it go, which then
Yeah.
causes anxious moments, avoidant moments, whatever you want to call it. So the awareness and like we, I've done today with the micro habits, micromanaging those course corrections, if you'd like, still allows you the ability to operate from your truth, from
Yeah.
who you are as a person.
Yeah. We are getting inputs all of the time from our environment. Uh, you know, we are influenced by social media, by
Mm,
marketing, by brands, by other people's experiences around us. That influence is always having an effect on us. And if we attach value to it, we have an emotional connection to it in some way, that is going to alter our course ever so slightly. And that noise becomes a distraction that pulls us off course. So if you can
mm,
recognize the noise for what it is, and like you rightly say, through those micromanagement tactics and techniques, is then correct course that you can come back to. And it's not that those things are evil or bad, or it's just noise. You
mm,
know, it's just environment. It's just the way the world works. But
mm.
recognize that you have the ability to course correct and
I've
steer
got
your ship in the direction that you. Yeah. Sorry.
I've got one more question, mate. If if you could teach the world, because you just said how that's how the world works, and it falls nicely onto my last question. If you could teach the world one thing, what would it be?
We don't get in this world what we want. We get who we are. That everything stems out of the identity. And if we have that identity sorted, there is an inevitability. It's like planting. I got a seed here. It's a carrot seed. I plant it in the ground. I'm guaranteed it's going to be a carrot. If I take that carrot seed and I put it in a bed that's got tomato seeds, it's still going to be a carrot. That
Mm,
DNA is going to make that seed turn into the plant that's going to produce the harvest after its own kind. And that's the same truth around identity. That identity is going to produce a harvest after its own kind. So we don't need to fret and worry about the behaviors and the skills as much as we should be about shaping the identity. Then the rest will lend itself to creating that harvest according to the identity that is feeding at the DNA. There is an inheritability. Shape the identity. Work on the who, the what will take care of itself. As soon as you sort the I ams, the I gots, I haves, I do's will sort themselves. Sort the I am.
Love that. That's it, mate.
Love your stuff, buddy. Love your stuff.
A good way to end it. Wait there. 1 second.